My first spiritual teacher, I think he was in his 80s and I was 21 or 20. And he said, why did God create death? God could have not created death. We could have all had, and we probably did in the past, have a sense of continuity and connection versus dead pictures and a sense of extinction or fear or awe. Trying to protect ourselves from the inevitable. So my first spiritual teacher said, why did God create death? Why? To break up the marriages, was his answer. He said that the consciousness gets over-identified with form. Our sense of self, awareness, consciousness, senses get hooked on certain forms and sense perceptions. A lot of meditation has to do, in spiritual practice, has to do with developing sense-free thinking, or an experience that includes a more eternal view. Spiritual and meditation practices often center around learning to be still. Pranayama, many yoga practices, are a concentration into some form or stillness and a relaxation into a oneness with all. Spiritual experience tends to be, for most people, something that transcends our day-to-day experience and our limits and our sense of self and other. H.P. Blavatsky, in the Key to Theosophy, talks about what is eternal or immortal and what is not. Rudolf Steiner, in Anthroposophy, once being involved with Theosophy, also talks about what is more eternal and what is fleeting and impermanent. The Tibetans, everything's impermanent. Everything is impermanent. Yet there's something that keeps looking. There's something that thus I've heard, and a little bit of experience, there's something that looks, there's something within us I guess maybe I should really ask it as a question. Is there something within us that is eternal? The basic teachings of Theosophy and Anthroposophy and Buddhism and Western Hermetic schools is that obviously the physical body is not eternal, and that when we go to sleep, for instance, we kind of drop the physical body, and that sleep is a little death, the petite death or something like kind of. So I guess let me make this simple, or share with you the teaching of the Western Hermetic, Theosophical, Rosicrucian, Anthroposophical view. We have a physical body, and then we have an etheric, cosmological wind body or breath body, vital air. We have like words don't really capture this. There's a physical body that's enlivened by the cosmos, And the etheric body is the, like you might say, the sun energy that enlivens and uplifts. It's just like when the day comes and the sun comes up, we have this sense of uprising. There's an uprising in dying. There's an uprising that comes from all of our still moments. But to keep it at the simple level, we have a physical body, and then we have an enlivening etheric body that, like the plants, rise and open to the cosmos and the sun, stars, moon, and are also somehow quietly rooted in stillness. We have an astral body, like in astrology, the logos or logic of the astral. The astral body is sympathy, antipathy, like and dislike, attraction and repulsion. And the astral body has this kind of like consciousness that it gives us, from the bottom to the top, from a consciousness of the worst things and a consciousness of the highest, most noble, angelic, archangelic, spiritual hierarchical. The astral is like Emerson's comment that the poet is like a lightning rod that reaches to the highest heaven and into the depths of hell and connects heaven and earth, you know? So the astral body is like that. And then there's it, and most people think, you know, in the Western mystery schools, that the first step of initiation, or the path to the light on the path, the first step to light on the path, the first step to the enlightenment, is the purification of the astral body. The physical body was formulated by the spiritual hierarchies that come through the 12 signs of the zodiac, the workers for God, if you want to put it that way. It's like somebody owns the company, but they have all these workers, and that emanate that first cause. So we have a physical body that's enlivened by the etheric. We have an astral body that's like and dislike and higher and lower, and the thinking that comes about from understanding all these opposites of light and dark, good and bad, left and right, hot and cold. Angels and craziness. Then we have an ego. The ego, in anthroposophical terms, is the I am. I am. But I'm saying that I am is a threefold I am. Rudolf Steiner points out there's this sentient, intellectual, and consciousness soul that is operating until we establish an I am. And the I am, in a simplistic way of saying it, is the mind stream continuum, as I phrased it in my book, Astrological Aspects, the Art, which isn't just an astrology cookbook, but attempts to talk about the relationship of the foundation stone meditation of Rudolf Steiner's with the Four Noble Truths of Tibetan Buddhism, and the 7 steps of if you think out the foundation stone meditation of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and then the human encounter, then the human being has a turning point of time and death and rebirth, and arising from this, going to the deepest parts of matter, like the Prodigal Son story. The prodigal son wakes up eating with the pigs and realizes that he's the son of a king, and he returns and he meets his father halfway. All these images and processes and metaphors and brilliant insights into the process of becoming a human being and incarnating and turning back in our consciousness, raising our consciousness to higher consciousness, and returning with an awakened spirit, soul, mind. So we have a physical body that's enlivened by the etheric for vitality and life. But then we have like this intelligent or this consciousness that arises with the astral body, that we sense all these things, good and bad and pleasurable and not pleasurable. And we have an I am body. That I am body is the physical, etheric, astral, and then the I am, the sense of self, being everything, connected to everything, connected to nothing, and freedom from the self, freedom from the world. There's this kind of stillness that can free you, or meditative, transcendental perception that can be developed or tripped upon. It's good to develop things because develop your thinking and understanding of these things, because a lot of people have spiritual experiences that they just suddenly have through the art of being a human being, gardening, family, love, work, success. People have these epiphanies and greater openings to a sense of wholeness and galactic, cosmic reckoning and insights. But often, as fast as they come is as fast as they go. And this is why in Tibetan Buddhism, the Lam Rin virtue mind training is called a gradual path. The Lam Rin is a gradual path. The Holy Grail teachings of Western Hermetics and Rudolf Steiner, Anthroposophy, the Grail teachings, Parsifal, Cretin de Troyes, the mysterious pre-Parsifal legends of the Mabinogian Tales from Wales. Tales from Wales, a whale of a story. And there's a golden thread of spiritual teachings that take different shapes and different outfits, different expressions throughout all history. And so there's the physical, etheric, astral, and there's the ego of everything, nothing, and a mind, and the attempt to awaken higher consciousness so that we're somehow still here. We distill our experience into being still here after we die. And when we die, the physical body's dropped, but even in the New Testament of the Christians, they have the second death, they refer. And the Masons talk about that, and the Hermetics. I mean, all these spiritual schools, by the way, the ultimate conspiracy theory is that the human heart has not fully flowered with intelligence, wisdom, and creative daring for the truth that's within all of us. When we die, we drop the physical body, and then our etheric body, which is this chi, prana, vital, golden energy, that's like another kind of separation from our spiritual sense of self or spirit soul, and the etheric body goes back into the rhythms of the cosmos, which gave it to us according to our dharma and our karma. Karma being debt to the past, karma being debt to the past, cause and effect of the past, and dharma being the debt to the future, that we can all make it, that we can get enlightened. Dharma is how to proceed so we can become fulfilled and enlightened and help others. So we drop the physical, we drop the etheric. Then there's the death of the astral body, the sense of good and bad. The etheric body is also, by the way, kind of like a scope of history and a kind of a memory of the Akashic records and cosmic memory. And the astral body is this kind of creator with eternity, but it's also, when not realized, is just illusion and trouble. And every flower has a poisonous something underneath it to bite you. Heaven and hell visit each other in the astral body. And the I am is that there's a central reference point that everything is like important. Everything is divine. Everything is part of the journey and message. Everything is part of the song, this great song of the universe. And when we die, we drop the physical, etheric, and astral, and we journey as a spirit soul pilgrim. And we journey in our spiritual soul. We journey from the earth. I mean, it's said in Anthroposophy that a third of your life, after you die, a third of your life, the spiritual soul lives this side of the moon so that it can stay close to the earth and see everything that one did and where it's going in the future of the earth. The materialist will tell you, the materialist will tell you that energy never dies, it just changes shape. It's a shapeshifter, and it goes on. Many scientific or rich or powerful thinker has told me that energy never dies. But they can't handle that the mind might not die either, that there's a mind stream continuum. They can't handle that. They can't handle that the virtuous and non-virtuous actions, whether they're conscious or unconscious, that we perform, will continue to live on with or without us. And that there's a really good chance that our spiritual soul will be pulled back to complete and finish the job, to finish karma, and to awaken and complete dharma, one's own enlightenment, whether that enlightenment is a peace that passes understanding, an eternal bliss void of emptiness, space, calm abiding, space, equanimity with everything. Or is it the bliss, immortal bliss, and heavenly pleasures, ultimate, more eternal heavenly pleasures that come from seeing the virtue of all things, to see the meaning and purpose of all things? Or the third immortality body of a Buddha, from space and selfless, no self heaven, to the bliss and virtue of all things and dance of life, to the Nirmanakaya. I talk about this in the Voice of the Silence talks, but obviously Tibetan Buddhism speaks to it too, which Blavatsky was talking about in a Western Hermetic way. The transformation of death into these three vehicles, very similar to Rudolf Steiner's foundation stone, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, is this oneness, universal mind, Christos, and the spirit of all things in movement and non-movement. Everything, nothing in a mind, and this human experience of experiencing it. So when we die, we drop these bodies that are coarser. We distill them into the elixir. We distill the experiences into the elixir of enlightenment. And we take our little bag, like the fool in the tarot cards. We've condensed everything in this little bag we're carrying on our journey. And we get past the moon and our instinctive and connections with we have to get past Venus and all the great feelings we had and vision, all the things we had that felt so good in love and friends and some of the best experiences. We get past Mercury and what we think about things, even our most beautiful thoughts. And we experience the sun. We expand, our spiritual soul expands out to the sun, and we experience the Christ and all the heroes and the Mithras and the Hermes and the Buddha and the Krishna and the Apollo and the Artemis and Athena. We experience the heroes and all the gods and goddesses, the sons and daughters of the one that's imperishable, unthinkable, beyond speech and thought, the eternal omnipresent at oneness. There's nothing even to be at one, it's all one. But then there comes the only begotten sons and daughters, which are the heroes, and it's basically our Atma Buddha principle that you can read about in Key to Theosophy, or you can read Steiner's Theosophy book and his physico-etheric astral and his soul life of sentient intellectual and consciousness soul that links up, that he has this whole rap on how the manas, or the spirit self, transforms the astral body. The astral body is purified and is awakened conscious manas and universal mind. And the Buddhic principle of divine compassion, all-inclusive, a circle that includes us all and doesn't divide. And how that transforms the etheric body into a conscious Buddhic life spirit of life, some kind of awakening. There's not words for this because I'm just saying that and we think it down here, but you have to be there to get it. And the Atma transforms the physical. So anyway, that's one approach. But we're talking now about dropping the bodies and going through the planetary spheres and then voyaging out to Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the stars, the trans-Saturnian, and and we visit all the stars. Like the ultimate enlightened beings are like the intelligence of the stars. Imagine if somebody treated you like you're just a physical body, and a lot of relationships are just the physical body, or the mental and the physical, or the emotional and the physical, but they don't really intellectualize together. Or there's the intellectual and emotional, like in some churches, in personal relationships, but there's no physical relationship. There's a lot of different bodies and levels. And when we start talking about the physical, emotional, mental, the physical, etheric, astral, and then the sentient soul and the consciousness soul, intellectual soul, consciousness soul, how many of these do we interact with each other? Especially when you think of your lover or your mother and your father and your friends and your workmates. There's a lot of combinations. And when we die, death is here to break up the marriages of consciousness attached to form. And so we lose one form after another. It's like a reverse of Inanna descending into the underworld, where she has to take something off. Like when we die, we take something off and we go into the spiritual worlds. And we visit the stars, which are spiritual beings, that we don't just treat each other like we're just physical and mental, or mental and emotional. That we have we have like a spirit, a truth body, and a universal compassion, love body. And we have a universal mind body. And we have a threefold soul. And we have a sense of I am everything, nothing, and a mind. And we have a mind and feelings. And we have a lot of different bodies. And only meditation can awaken. I mean, a lot of problems happen in relationships because we don't discern and discriminate between these bodies. Like, just a crude example would be one person's emotional and the other person's just being logical and common sense, cold intellect. Or hot intellect and angry because the emotions aren't smart or something. And the emotions think that the cold intellect's not feeling and doesn't have compassion and understand. This gets on with ships passing in the night and somebody fixated on one body or another versus somebody else who's not even in those bodies. So we die, we go to the heavenly realm, and, like in Dante's tragi-comedy kind of thing, and his thing is that we end up in a divine rose. We end up like experiencing the most spiritual side of everything. And all of a sudden we remember we're not done yet and we're reincarnating and we have to come back through the planetary spheres. Now this is delineated in a book called States After Death at the Mayflower Bookshop. Like it's a little pamphlet you can buy. And there's Rudolf Steiner's version that's very wonderful called From Death to Rebirth. Life Between Death and Rebirth. And there's a lot of books I have on, there's Ocean of Theosophy by Judge. There's a lot of books that talk about this and getting through the Kama Rupa or the desire realm. And there's teachings on how people that insist there's no heaven just blank out until they get, everybody gets enlightened after they die, but a lot of people aren't conscious of it and they don't have this kind of therapeutic healing process. This idea I said earlier, that we die and in our kind of astral body, we're hung out this side of the moon till we really get what we did and what we didn't do. The sin of omission, sin is when we act out of separateness and we don't act out of a unifying principle of oneness with all life. We don't have the wisdom and compassion, the wisdom and skillful means to maneuver. So we go through this and we reincarnate. So I talked to people who own funeral homes, and they pretty much agree that they don't really have this esoteric, metaphysical, theosophical, anthroposophical self-realization kind of Emersonian idea about death and rebirth. And Brahmanism of India that even Emerson mentions, that part of us that's Brahma can't die and has been here all along. We're just not aware of it. It's like when you meet the right situation or person, or you have a certain experience, and it's the epiphany of the totality of everything that you really always dreamed you were, right? And when you get to that higher sense of self, through meditation or yoga or insight, study, reflection, concentration, meditation, experience, whether by accident or on purpose, when we experience the totality of our wholeness and our beautiful and our good and true, and we see it reflected in the world and we see the world reflected in us. When you really see your higher self, it's like everybody just kind of has this experience that this is the real me. Sometimes I think we get it with a lover, but it's so easy to lose. But this is the real me. I can be myself. I can be my naked spiritual soul self, whether clothes on or off. It's about naked mind and naked heart and openness to the oneness and spirit of the world and the universe. And within our deepest self, there's this conversing or song that unites. And we think that this is who I really am. We can't, it's hard to remember heaven until we get back there. We remember the hell. If you had to take away your beautiful experiences or your bad ones, if somebody came up and said, right now, make a decision, you have to surrender and give up all your greatest fun, beautiful, pleasurable experiences, or give up all your suffering and the trials and tribulations you went through. Which would you give up? If you give up all the suffering and trials and tribulations, you cannot go forward on the path of initiation. Steiner says that if you want to be initiated, you have to compost your biography. I think some difficult translator said that Steiner said, you have to destroy your biography, but I'm convinced that he meant being a friend of Rudolf Steiner's. Just talked to him yesterday. I'm convinced somehow intuitionally or in my imagination, just your imagination, that if you want to get initiated or enlightened, you have to compost your biography. You have to be ready to live a life that's not separated from life, that's not separated from the other. And this has a lot to do with the Aquarian age and the sixth post-Atlantean cultural epoch. that Blavatsky and Steiner talk about, this permeability, this coming to feel and experience what other people feel and experience. So let's catch up to where we are. I want to do another talk on more exact information about what Rudolf Steiner and Blavatsky say of this path from death to rebirth, and also what the Tibetans have to say, because the Tibetans have a very interesting point that death is your last opportunity to get enlightened. It's very rare to get enlightened after death, although people have done it. Buddha is said to have gotten more enlightened while he was in a hell realm by having compassion for other people that were torturing him, making him suffer. Compassion is pretty much the easiest virtue to move forward, grow, ascend, and raise one's consciousness and get over the separate self, the ego that separates us and acts out of separateness and desire and fear and protection of, a lot of us are protecting things, but are we protecting our enlightenment or our future enlightenment or our most sacred holy center? When we do, in Jungian psychology, they have this term called the demon lover, that the things we're doing, the things that we do that are killing us and hurting us and preventing us and obstructing us from getting enlightened, that's the demon lover. We need the soulmate. The nature of the soulmate is that it's your own soul trying to mate with the spirit of yourself in the world, the oneness, the one life, the one truth, the one love that permeates and differentiates into every iota of this universe. These are poetic, idealistic things, and there's words and there's feelings you might feel. But there's an experience of love that goes beyond understanding. Just like the heart is beyond the head. There's an understanding. There's an experience you could have direct experience rather than just reading a menu and looking at maps and pictures. You can actually enter the path. You can become the path. You can generate the becoming the path and entering the path. And one can spark completion processes. In Tibetan Buddhism, they call it completion processes. So Tibetan Buddhism has, for getting enlightened, the purification. In Tibetan Buddhism, they have this, I don't want to say too much about it, but they have this idea of concentrating and breathing in all the movements and winds into your deepest heart and uniting, like in the Western Hermetic tradition, they're very similar, like uniting what's as above, so below. That as you breathe in, bottoms up, top down, we kind of breathe into our, this is Robert of MayflowerBookshop.com. This is his kind of take on a synthesis of Steiner and Tibetan Buddhism, Theosophy, and other systems, Western Hermetic. This idea of breathing into one's heart. Rudolf Steiner, you can do it whether you're dead or alive. There's subtle breath, the whole idea with so many people having trouble breathing, I should really do a whole talk on breathing. But basically, with this whole COVID thing, all that stuff that's going on, you want to learn how to breathe. So you let all your breath out. I talk about it in a Patanjali yoga aphorism talk, where you let all your breath out and then you breathe in. And you breathe into your heart. And Steiner would say you empty the pictures into your heart and that you create out of nothing. The Tibetans go a little further. Steiner does. My surprise is that Steiner has said it somewhere. You just have to find it. The Tibetans purify, center in the heart, and out of this constant purification, eventually one has clarity or clear light and sees clear of all temporal things and experiences the eternal self, whether that's Brahman, Buddha, Christ, our higher self, call it what you will. But there's an experience of an eternal relationship, an eternal centering. There's a sense of selflessness, of wisdom, the wisdom of the right view of emptiness. And what rises out of that, like the rose that arises over the death of desire and fear that Rudolf Steiner talks about in the sense of the rosy cross initiation, meditation, that one in Tibetan Buddhism arises an illusory body that is the imagination that everyone's ever had about what does it mean to get enlightened and what is a Buddha, what is a Christ, what is a Krishna, what is moksha, freedom from and to become. So this is a little glimpse of transforming the moment or death or a terrible accident or incident, that one can let go of one's breath, breathe into the heart, and remember who you are. An eternal pilgrim, a spark of the divine, hoping to awaken in full participation and reception of truth and love in all life. I think that if there is no such thing, like I've been talking, let's create it. Let's make it happen. I think that that is the path of the hero. The path of the hero is to journey to the four corners of the earth and dead center, to find the truth, to find the life. That's why people try to go in outer space. They haven't found life. They haven't found love. If we all would just let go of our breath and breathe back deep to the heart and be centered and still and look, feel. At some point one has the experience, just like when you love your family or you love some person, you love your dog or your cat or your garden, that you'll do anything to help it. I think that there's a place where we get to see that one life and love and truth that permeates awe, that resides at a still point within awe. And it's awesome. When you really get to know what's going on, you fall in love with everything. And you desire to awaken higher faculties, the higher faculty that will train you in the invisible university of life. So, death, where's thy sting? We move from darkness to light, ignorance to wisdom, aloneness to being all one, and from death to immortality. It's a great journey. And you just can't find it in the movies and on TV, and you really can't find it in books. What can come through time, having experienced life and studied the great spiritual teachings. When we bring our experience and the experience of others through the magical rose glasses and filters of spiritual teachings, our experience goes into the stillness of our deepest self with the strongest yearnings and ideals of awakening higher truths and compassion and love that can heal and make whole. To make the word healing or to heal is really to make whole. That's what that means. To make a door, to make the hole in the wall that obstructs us. The holy is the door to go on. There's something that we need to relax and not go on and not go through changes. I mean, the first step in yoga, Patanjali's Yoga Aphorisms, a book of not yoga postures, but yoga of the mind, and the first rule is to be here now and to cease the modifications of the mind, to be still. So there's some kind of trinity takes place in the stillness, in the wisdom, insight, arousal of something rises like a rose of understanding. I mean, there's something that moves us to see more and feel more and grasp more. And there's something that honors us by getting rid of any sense of self or separateness and being able to just be here with you, just to be here with yourself. To be still and know that divine oneness permeates all, and each one of us is a unique expression of that one electricity, that one magnetism, that one love. So again, I'll come back to this, and I'd like to go over so the reason I was planning on doing more Rudolf Steiner, but a couple of people have died recently, and today I heard about another one. Again, people don't die; they drop their body, and they go through a really critical 3 days of processing and seeing their life backward, and seeing it with a lot of clarity, and then re-experiencing birth, and re-experiencing from birth to death on how everything else experienced you. So there's this 3 days, and then there's like 49 days that are more subtle, and then there's a third of your life that you're stuck on this side of the moon, looking at like everything you did on this planet while you were here, or what you didn't do and what you could have done. And you start to get how you could have changed a lot more. You could have made it better. And Steiner says that everybody has a little bit of regret. Or so, I mean, he may not use the word regret, but he says that everyone thinks they didn't quite do enough, and they could have done better, and that's part of the game. So we experience, it's really critical after we die to have 3 days of just being still, and it's really great opportunity if nobody can disturb the body, but not everybody can do that. I've experienced a lot of people who have done that, but not everybody can do that. And a lot of people think they're pretty wise and spiritual friends and teachers that if you burn the corpse in fire, it's the fastest way to get out and not have to suffer this kind of separation of the etheric and astral from the physical. It happens really quick. But I think that when you grow old, relatively speaking, a lot of people have especially when you have spiritual practice. I mean, all my spiritual teachers died natural death and had an easy time. I mean, they had those rough moments, but when they went, it was really beautiful and glorious. And the physical elemental doesn't want to give it up. And so we die and we experience in a flash our whole life going backwards, and with incredible clarity. Just like it's like common sense clarity. It's not a put down, or it's not a puffing up. It's neither way. It's neither yin nor yang. I mean, it's like you just walk right through what just happened in this life, and you see it really clearly. And and one travels back seeing your life really clearly to birth. And then you re-experience your birth, and you come back from birth to death, seeing how everything, even you were driving 70 miles an hour and you went past a forest and you didn't really pay much attention to it, and you don't even remember it in your logical mind, conscious mind. But when you die, you'll remember all these things, and you'll see how they experienced you. My joke or wit about that, humor, is that if death didn't kill you, after you experience how everybody else and everything in this world, from animals and plants and stones and skies and trees, how everything else experienced you. I think if it didn't kill you when you died, it would kill you then. And then we experience our death again, and then we're kind of like out, and we're dropping the etheric and we're dropping the astral, and we drop our separate ego, and we experience the Christed or the solar logos part of ourselves, the hero, the higher self, the saintly side of the most holy side. And we go all the way out to the stars and spiritual beings in the heavenly. And those people that need a rest in heaven, they find everything they want to experience. And some people who are really bad or really high at depths, they come right back. They reincarnate right back, like little kids that die too early, like angels come and touch us and they just go. They come and touch the earth, these little kids that die really at birth or before birth or within the first 7 years. I mean, it's really nice to be able to live 28, 30 years and have your Saturn return. Cosmic and Human Metamorphosis, Steiner talks about the 3 meetings. And one of these meetings is the meeting with the father. The fathers or the father. Like we know about the meetings with the mothers with Goethe, Faust, but this is a whole other thing. The meeting of the fathers at 30 in the Saturn return, and you stop looking in the past and you start looking forward. But that's another story. So every meditation should be like a little death and big insights, and you come back fresh and renewed to try again. Every day, every morning we wake up is another opportunity to try again. That's why I meditate every night before I go to sleep, that I will go into spiritual worlds and keep learning. And I offer myself up that I can get enlightenment and bless the world. And then I offer, when I wake up, I sit up straight and take a deep breath in and let all my breath out. And I wish that I dedicate the whole day that I could get enlightenment and help others make good karma and virtuous merit. We should all be wishing that we get enlightenment, and if we can't, that we have a better opportunity next life to get it. So with this, I wanted to share some things about death. Death is here to break up the marriages. Death is a uniting with our higher self and seeing our way clear. Where there's love, there's no fear. And when people die, they live on in our hearts. We keep having conversations with them. But we need to have conversations with their higher self and not cling to the external pictures of them. Let's look for the eternal in each other and the divine universal love and truth. Let's start there together and individually alone. Okay, bless your heart. We'll get back to you soon on further adventures into death and rebirth and how to experience our unbornness. Steiner says that it's really sad we don't see our past lives clearly to learn the lessons, but he says it's sadder we don't see the future life. We don't see what we're doing is going to lead us into this future that we don't even have any idea. But we go, how did I get here? Why are these things happening like we are now? We're going to be doing the same thing next future life. And he thinks even sadder than not seeing the past or future life is to not see our unbornness, he calls it. The us that was between our last death and rebirth. So let all this stuff melt. Let your breath out. Everything goes away and melts. Breathe back in, and we'll try it again another day. This is Robert Thibodeau of Mayflower Bookshop in Berkeley, Michigan. MayflowerBookshop.com. Bless your heart, mind. Let's go.